You folks. There we go. Now I'm just gonna get out of the way and hand it off to her.
I think we will use the mic though, because this one's kind of quiet.
Okay, give us a second here.
Or just like the handheld is fine.
You're just gonna walk around?
Yeah.
Okay. Second.
Okay. All right. Can y'all hear me okay? Okay. Does that click? Okay.
Give us a second. There we go.
And this is
Here we
for
clicker.
okay. All right. Hello. Thank you, everybody, for giving me the opportunity to speak today. My name is Alexis Waters, and I am Senior Forensic Email Investigator at Solace Security, but I also do a lot of work under the CFC Response brand, which is our incident response side of the house. Today, I am here to talk to you about all the different ways I see native M365 applications abused beyond the inbox. So I specialize in business email compromise, but within that, we see a lot of the other parts of the ecosystem leveraged by threat actors to do bad. So we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on in business email compromise, and then I'll get into the actual applications and some final tips and takeaways. And then I have prizes and goodies. So questions, we got a little challenge earlier. So Annie, my colleague, will help hand those out. All right, so about me, like I said, I'm a senior forensic email investigator. I've been doing this for about 2.5 years. Prior to this, I worked at an MSP. Prior to that, I was a stay-at-home mom. I'm a midlife career changer and have some background in marketing and advertising prior to moving into cyber. And really, marketing is just kind of like white hat fishing. So you're just trying to get people to open your email, click the link, and give you some money, right? It's the same thing. It's just with different motivations. So I feel like that prior experience actually made me kind of uniquely suited for what I ended up doing today. There are 5 people on my team, including Annie, and we have a ton of work. We did over 180 cases last year, took over 700 calls, which Annie mostly did, of people calling in concerned about their email environment and compromise. And not all of those calls meet criteria for investigation, but we still answer them. We still talk to people. So we have a lot of kind of frontline insight into like what is happening right now in the wild, what is causing harm. And then, yeah, when I'm not doing this stuff, I like to garden, I knit, I read a lot. Yeah. So let's talk about kind of a level set here about BECs and phishing. So if you see on the image, you see that the top 5 crime comparison from the FBI, phishing is like the biggest, right? Like it's huge. And it's expensive. We see lots of wire fraud. We have cases where people accidentally wire over $1 million to the wrong account and then it doesn't come back, right? Like it can be very devastating. And having someone in your inbox is kind of a uniquely violating experience. Even though it is maybe just your work email, there's personal stuff in there, right? Like there's stuff that like, I don't know, I don't want everyone to read all my emails. And so in addition to like working with people who have had a significant financial loss, there is that emotional component of like, hey, this feels really icky, right? And so we have to be sensitive to that as well as we work through these cases and take these triage calls. The TTPs are changing very quickly in business email compromise. When I was trained to start doing this about 2.5 years ago, I was told, look for a phishing email, like get in the received message traces and start like 3 to 5 days back from that initial malicious sign in, and then start looking for that phishing email. I have a case right now. Oh, go ahead. Oh, techniques, tactics, and procedures that the bad actors use. It's like their playbook. So yeah, so 2.5 years ago, it's like, oh, the user would get a phishing email, they'd click on it, and then we'd start seeing bad activity several days later. Most of my cases now, it is less than an hour from when the user receives the phishing email, clicks on it, and the bad activity starts happening, the malicious sign-ins. I have a case right now is under 10 minutes from that one. So it's happening very fast, and it's very hard to defend against that. And then, yes, we see M365 cases the most, but now we're also seeing more and more Google Workspace compromise. And then MFA has long been touted as like, oh, if you have MFA enforced, you're not going to have a problem. Well, now they have phishing kits that reverse proxy and steal that token and bypass the MFA. MFA is still an important layer of defense, but it is no longer like a bulletproof gold standard. So defense in depth strategy, having multiple layers, conditional access policies, MFA, user training, general things like that. And then, yes, of course, the users are the weakest link, right? We're all human. We all get got. We all, like social engineering is a huge thing, and phishing is a combination of social engineering and then also the technical breach. And so scammers are going to scam, people are going to be people. We're going to feel scared. We're going to feel urgent. We're going to feel like we're going to get in trouble. So we act fast without always thinking. All right, any questions about like general lay of the land with BECs these days? Okay. Annie has prizes and swag. So if you answer a question, you can get a goodie or ask a question. That is beyond the scope of my talk, sir. So, okay, we're going to play a little game. The prize here is one of our Solace Security Yetis. This is Catch the Fish. We've got 3 different emails here. So the first one, I forgot the C on the third, but A comes from Dropbox. The middle one looks like it comes from Dropbox, but if you can kind of see in the middle, the domain is not quite right. It says info-dropbox at annex-o.com. And then the one in the far corner is says it's from SharePoint, and it says file has been shared with, and it's all redacted. But so seeing those 3 things, how many of you think A is the phishing email? Anybody think A? No? Okay. What about B? Who thinks B is the phishing email with the kind of funny domain, the annex-0? Okay, we got some Bs. What about C? Okay. Does anybody have a secret third option that they think? They're all phishing emails. They are actually, can y'all hear me okay? I feel like my mic is okay. Yeah. It seems quiet. All right, I'll just be loud. I don't know.
Hello.
Okay, is that better? Oh yeah, that's better. All right, cool. So yeah, they're all phishing emails. And the first one legitimately did come from a compromised Dropbox account. The second one is kind of like, honestly, in my opinion, rather low sophistication, because if you're paying attention to domains and stuff, you can pick that one out pretty quick that that's weird. And then the final one actually did come from SharePoint too. And we're going to talk more about how threat actors leverage SharePoint to do bad. So for more context here, Microsoft is the world's most abused brand. And you can see I pulled this from Proofpoint, the 2024 State of the Fish. So this is really current information. Over 20 million email threats using the brand, according to Proofpoint. It's probably more than that. All this stuff tends to be underreported, in my opinion. And so, yeah, it's pretty intense there. So, okay, so moving on, we're going to talk about Microsoft Teams and how we see Microsoft Teams being abused. These screenshots are from 2 separate incidents. I'm going to start with the horizontal one. If you look at the from, it says help desk, and then it says admin_374, and then it's from an unlicensed Microsoft account, the onmicrosoft.com domain. And the user that received this was actually an incoming Teams call that they received from this external help desk user, and they answered it. And you can kind of see in here, it was about an 8-minute phone call through Teams. And in that 8-minute phone call, the threat actor, pretending to be help desk, said, "Hey, we've noticed some strange things on your computer. Can you install Microsoft Quick Assist? And we're just going to hop in your computer, and we're gonna take care of it for you, okay?" Prior to this user, a couple of days before, had gotten an email bomb, and they had gotten a ton of spam in their email account all these weird signups for things they didn't sign up for. So they had already in their mind, like, oh, yeah, I have seen some weird stuff. I did get a bunch of weird emails. Yes, please help me. Installs Quick Assist, and the whole company was ransomed. $4 million was the ransom ask on that one. So just an innocent little call, right? You're just doing your thing, you're going about your day, you want your stuff fixed, and it can be devastating. The other one, the vertical one, this is actually a screenshot from a Teams chat that the user provided for us. You can see it says Juliana M external at the top of that one. This Juliana person reached out to multiple users in this company. She's a recruiter. She's reaching out. She's got a job offer. She thinks that you're a great fit. She found you on LinkedIn and externally sent you a Teams message at work and says, hey, you want a job? And a user was like, you know what? Yeah, I'm having a rough day and I'm ready to leave this place. Yes, thank you for reaching out. And then they download this zip file to read the job description, and it's malware and they're ransomed. So, people only think about the phishing emails. Phishing from Teams is now a thing, and it is a potentially more devastating thing than just like an invoice fraud or a wire fraud, because now we've got ransomware. Now we've got business resumption involved. Now we need lawyers involved. Now we've got threat actor communications. It gets very, very expensive, very, very stressful, very, very fast. So let's talk about protecting teams. My slides got a little weird. At the top, there is the admin portal for Teams. It's just admin.teams.microsoft.com. But you can go in there, go into the admin center, and when you go under the users, you look under external access, and by default, Microsoft lets all external domains contact your users via Teams, by default. So if you don't know this, you're going to get these phone calls. Your users are going to get these help desk phone calls, these recruiter, whatever, and they're going to get tricked. So real easy, free way to defend against this is don't allow all external domains to talk to your users on Teams. Yes. So, I mean, like you can do recon, like OSINT, like look at LinkedIn, look at, various data breaches. Sure. How do you pick your target? Yeah. So no, that's a good question. So like on LinkedIn, yeah, I signed up with my personal email, but it says where I work. And then you go to, solacesecurity.com, and then there are websites like hunter.io. You can put in a domain and you can get a list of all the people who work there, or some sort of reasonable guess as to what the naming convention is. And so like, oh, it seems like most people, even though I don't have that particular user email, everyone else in that company comes up as first initial dot last name. So then you can just guess. And so that's kind of the easiest, lowest tech way to go about it, is that you just do a little research and you pick a target and you go for it. So by not allowing external domains, you're just removing the option for this to happen. But in some companies, you do need to contact through external domains and external chats. When you click that drop down, there's a lot of different options. You can add specific ones. So if these are trusted businesses that you work with and you need to talk to them through Teams, you can add that in there. You can block specific ones, or you can block all of them. Yes. Yes. There's a lot of Microsoft documentation about various best practices, but the thing is do companies have the resources to read through that and implement it and stay on top of it and update it as, their situation changes? And that's always a struggle, right? Like nobody has enough ever, right? Like everybody feels a little stretched thin. And so staying on top of some of these things can be really challenging, especially for smaller organizations. Most of the work we do is with small to medium-sized businesses. And sometimes their IT guy is just somebody's brother's cousin that like took a class in high school, and that's it, you know? So that's kind of why I'm bringing up like these really basic configuration changes, because it's a quick, easy, free way to prevent some of this stuff from happening. So moving on to SharePoint, we see SharePoint leveraged all the time to share malicious files to other trusted contacts from the compromised organization. And does anything stand out weird about this one to anybody? It is a legitimate SharePoint email. It really did, like when you share from SharePoint, this is what it looks like. I circled it in red. Can y'all see what that is? Okay, so that's a OneNote icon. Okay, sorry. Yeah, it's kind of hard with the screen size, but that's a OneNote icon. Who shares OneNote files as a part of their normal day-to-day business? Do any of y'all do that really? All right, well, Mark, you're always the bad kid in the back of the class, so I would have expected that from you. So that's weird, right? Like typically it would be like a PDF or a Word document or Excel spreadsheet. So, let's see. Oh, no, that's not yet. We'll talk a little bit more about OneNote in a second. But what happens is people go, they try to open this OneNote file. The OneNote file has an additional link and says, no, click on this link and view these documents. And then that's what routes the user to a credential harvesting website. And then they're compromised. But at that point, they're like, I've already put in all this work. I opened the share file and then it took me to this and now I'm clicking on this. And then people get into that like, let's get it done mindset, and they're not stopping to think like, this is kind of weird, right? Like, why am I getting a OneNote file? Andrew's never really emailed me before, but whatever. So that's one way SharePoint gets manipulated to perpetuate phishing campaigns. And there's even a possibility like OneNote can be used to distribute malware as well.
You can't tell where the file is actually posted. And because they want, again, it's going to marketing. They want to know who your person is.
Exactly. Right, because it's been run through like Mimecast or something, or it's got a link shortener on it. Yeah, I'll talk a little bit at the very end about ways I like to sandbox links. I've got some tools. But again, most people in their day-to-day, before they click on a link, are going to go through the trouble of like, let's copy this link and sandbox it. So, you know, it's a challenge. Okay, so the other thing that we've seen SharePoint abused for is this. All these user ISDs are anonymous, and there's like a long string. It's all the same string. What happens is in SharePoint, SharePoint can be configured so that anyone who has the link to that file can access it, edit it, download it, whatever. So in this particular case, it was a financial firm. There was a document in their SharePoint that had a code that they mailed to a new user, like physically mailed it to them, and with the plan of them calling back and giving them that code verbally to confirm their identity. They put the letter in the mail on one side of the country. The user was in the other side of the country. And 24 hours later, they get a call and they're like, hey, we've got the code. It's this. And they were like, wait a minute. We sent this through USPS. There's like regular mail. There's no way it went from California to New York in under 24 hours. How did this happen? And this was one of my cases. And I dug through and I couldn't see any of the normal indicators of compromise of like the threat actor accessing that particular email with the file attached or anything. And come to find out, the way this company's SharePoint was configured is that anybody who had the link to that file could view it anonymously and download it. So they had emailed back and forth the internal users the link to that file that had the identification code in that letter. The threat actor didn't need to like they didn't attach that letter file to any of the emails. The threat actor got that link and then anonymously logged in or was able to access it and download that letter and get that code. So kind of convoluted, but something that we're seeing more and more of is that these anonymous users are suddenly just accessing things in SharePoint. And as an investigator, all I can tell you is I know that IP is bad based on what we did. I can tell you these were downloaded. We don't know who did it. We don't have any other insight. And that's very frustrating to victims. They're like, we want to know everything. And I'm like, well, we can't. It's anonymous. So locking down SharePoint, kind of like Teams, SharePoint is always by default at its most permissive. So you can go into the SharePoint Admin Center, you go under policies, you look at sharing, and you can see here, this is an example of how it comes by default. So it's at its most permissive. Anyone can share files or folders using links, and it doesn't require a sign-in. That seems bad, right? And then by default, anyone with the link can share files and folders in SharePoint and OneDrive. And by default, you have edit permissions. So if a bad actor wanted to get in there and manipulate some account numbers on an invoice or a payment, an ACH payment kind of thing, there's nothing to stop them. So again, easy fix. Consider what your organization's needs are, but lock it down a little bit. Nobody needs to be able to edit anything by default that's being shared externally, right? And then it's better to lock it down and then punch holes where needed for specific cases than just leave it wide open. Any questions about SharePoint? Yes.
Everyone to be able to edit everything. Isn't it effectively a vulnerability in SharePoint because by default anyone can edit anything? Like, so why doesn't Microsoft fix it?
Because Microsoft keeps me busy and in a job.
No, called SharePoint, share.
Yeah. But no, there's a lot of things within Microsoft that if they changed it by default would be a lot more secure. And I don't know why it's not like that automatically.
Their IT person in a small company is somebody's brother, cousin. And they don't know that they don't have, again, the experience to realize, hey, this isn't working. Why isn't it working? Oh, I need to go enable this for this specific use case.
Right.
And so it seems like a lot of companies, like they want to reduce the friction as much as possible for their inexperienced users so they don't lose that business.
No, that's a great point. Yeah. And we get more casework and I get more raises. I don't know. And we all know users are what are users? Weakest link, give the man a bottle. You want a Yeti? He's the first one to say weakest link. Okay. Yeah.
All of the examples you've given so far that I've seen that have shown an IP address, it has always been an IPv4 address. What is your experience as far as the exposure and adoption of IPv4 versus IPv6? Because in my experience, I see that IPv4 is used much more than IPv6 because it's more easy to be masqueraded and anonymized. But maybe that's not correct in other situations.
So I see a mix. That example just happened to be IPv4, but we do see a mix of IPv4, IPv6. Again, when I started doing this about 2.5 years ago, we didn't really worry about the IPv6 ones because they didn't geolocate anywhere. They all just geolocated like the center of the US. That's changed. You can get a better sense of where those are coming from and whether or not they're bad. It is still heavily more IPv4, but we do see a mix. So, okay, so we're going to talk about OneNote a little bit more. Like we saw in that SharePoint file that was sharing a OneNote file, this is what they look like once that user clicks on that share file and they get this OneNote thing. And so, request for quotation, review document here. This is where they click on that review document here, and it takes them to the credential harvesting website that looks just like a Microsoft sign-in page. And then they got, then they're compromised. So this is one of the things that this is harder to defend against because people use OneNote in different ways and all. This is one of the things where user training is really important, that making your users understand, this looks weird. If it looks weird, if it smells weird, pause, ask, wait, it's better to ask and be like, oh no, it's no big deal at all than to move forward and then get a compromise. And then so Power BI, this is one that I had really was surprised to find. So we see the phishing email, it comes in, it's, it even has secured by proof point encryption down at the bottom. Obviously that's fake. But they click on that, read your message, it's a secure message. And then it takes the user to a Power BI page that just says view document. And that's it. And they're like, oh, okay, this seems legit. I always click on Power BI pages to view documents. I don't know. But it truly is a Power BI page. And we weren't able actually to tell if this was a threat actor hosted Power BI page or if it was hosted internally to the site. We didn't have the right visibility to figure that one out on this one. But then you can see here, they click on view document. It goes to that cred harvesting page. It looks like Microsoft, but if you look at the domain, it's garbage. It's not a Microsoft domain. So again, this is one of the things where most companies don't want to buy licenses they're not using, right? And a Power BI license is separate from a general Microsoft license. So kind of keeping your environment tidy and making sure people only have the level of license they need, that they only have the level of access they truly need to do their job, can kind of cut down on this. But if that were actually threat actor hosted, there's not a whole lot you could have done other than, again, user training. Does this look weird? It looks weird, right? So any questions on Power BI? No? Okay. That's honestly the only time I've ever seen it. It's kind of a unique one. So we were talking about oh man, you can't see the top of it. Sorry, guys. Talking about different ways of how do you tell if this is bad? What if you're unsure? What if you want to know? What if you're curious and you want to know where the link goes, but you don't want to blow up your environment? I like to sandbox emails with Sublime Security, and you can barely see it. I'm so sorry. But they have a free analyzer and it's all web-based. So you can upload, it only works for .eml files, which is kind of a pain. But it's all web-based. It doesn't keep anything. So you can go to analyzer.sublimesecurity. You drag and drop your EML file in there and it'll run a great analysis. It'll let you see what's in there. It'll tell you what links are in there. And you don't have to worry about it getting out into your environment. So if you run it in Sublime and you find out there's some links in there and you're like, huh, where do these links do? Well, there's a couple of places I like to sandbox those links. Again, free, not going to expose anything. Cloudflare, so radar.cloudflare.com/scan. Mark's so happy. He loves it when I say Cloudflare. That's a great one. And it gives you a lot of good information and you can see what it looks like in a safe way. URLscan.io is another one I use a lot. That one, it is by default set to public. So if you scan something, it will show up. There's a constant feed of URLs people are scanning. So if you're doing something that's potentially sensitive or could, expose information you don't want to be exposed on that URL, you can set it to private mode. And that's really preferred, right? And so you go to those, you sandbox your email, you find those links, and then you're like, huh, I want to look up some of these IPs I'm seeing on these links or where the email came from. My favorite two that I use all day, every day, scamlytics.com. It's nice because it will show you, is it a VPN? Is it a data center? What its reputation is. And then abuse IPDB. Again, it'll kind of show you what the reputation of that IP is. But both of those are all user submitted reputation things. And so a lot of times we'll do, and Annie can attest to this, it can be really confusing because we'll look up an IP and it has a great reputation. It says it's never been reported as malicious. But we see it like putting in inbox rules that are just punctuation. We know it's bad, but it gives us a sense of the geographic area. Was it a VPN? Kind of some of those other bits of information that we use and include in our findings reports. Anybody else have tools they like that they want to share that when they're doing similar sandboxing or IP lookups? I'm always on the hunt for new and better tools. So if anybody's got something they love. No? Okay.
They can look and see whether the links go somewhere that has malware. Like they can go and analyze that. It's not like they're, I mean, of course, a lot of people now are moving to encrypted email. And so then you can't do that kind of stuff. But for stuff like Gmail and Microsoft email, they can go through and look at all of the links and know and do that sandboxing for you. And I'm kind of surprised that they don't offer you a tool to do that, where you can say, process all the emails in my domain through the checker, you know.
So security is very much a pay to play situation, right? So depending on your license level, depending on the different services you've subscribed to within Microsoft, you can have that feature. The lower license levels don't offer it. Cloudflare has a product called Area 1. It's like Christmas for markup here. And it will do just that. And it will, you can go in and you can see what emails are coming in. It'll sandbox it for you. It does everything that you're saying, but it's not free. You know, it's not cheap. And it's a third-party app that you then have to integrate into your email tenant.
So I just wanted to mention that I think Gmail, they actually do that, because sometimes I send like some logs to my Gmail, and I noticed that like my own domain got like at one point got blocked by Gmail because I was sending like suspicious links to myself. So I had to basically like stop sending the logs like from my own domain to my own Gmail, because sometimes like some of the logs, they contain like those links, some of those links that apparently were like on the Gmail bad list. And it would present like a message that like potential like malicious links. And after you do that like a couple of times, basically, then your whole domain might be blacklisted, even if you're only sending it to yourself. So
yeah. And so part of that is because when phishing emails go out, a lot of times what they do is the sender's email, it will look like it's just being sent from the sender to the sender, and then they BCC a whole bunch of people to spam it. And so that's probably why it's flagging on like, oh, you keep sending these things to yourself and those links. And Google, honestly, I mean, there's a reason we see fewer Google Workspace compromises than we do M365 compromises, right? Like Google's got some better protections in place and at lower price points. How many people like reading email headers? All right, well, but you guys are, you know, we're a self-selected group here, but you know, when you're thinking about the muggles, most muggles don't want to sit around and read email headers, right? Annie can attest. That's what I call people that are non-IT people all the time. So, okay. So general tips and takeaways. Again, I'm sorry the slides got messed up. Proper configuration of the M365 tenant is going to take you a long way. Locking down those external Teams domains, being able to contact your users, locking down SharePoint so it is not the most permissive settings. And then the unified audit log. I meant to talk about this a little bit earlier, but who knows what a unified audit log is? You want to say? I'll give you a Yeti if you can explain it.
Well, the reason why I know about it was in the lower Office 360 or Microsoft 365 licenses, it was not available. And then when there started, who was it? Someone got hacked. I don't remember who it was. There was this big outcry. So Microsoft decided to enable or to offer that to everybody that subscribed to their service.
Yeah, Microsoft got real compromised.
Yeah, they got a lot of flack over that. And so it's an option, I believe over all of the license, but before it was a pay to play and it was not available for the lower subscription options.
Sort of. Really close. Annie, give him a Yeti. Really close. So the unified audit log is the main repository for evidence logging, security event logging in Microsoft. And again, like I said, in the 2.5 years that I've been doing this, things have changed significantly. We used to have a lot of other logs that were held in a different area. And then we had the unified audit log that held different information, and we'd pull all of it and correlate it. The unified audit log is off by default in Microsoft 365 prior to late 2022, after that big compromise. Then they were required to turn it on by default. So we still get cases where, you know, these companies have been around for 10, 15 years. That's never been turned on. And right now, Microsoft is moving away from holding logs anywhere else but in the unified audit log. So if your company doesn't have it on, you have an incident and you're trying to figure out what's going on, like say you need to prove that you've had an investigation so you can maintain your contracts with like a county or a city or something, we're not going to be able to tell you anything. And it's real easy to turn on. It is free now, like what you said. You just go to the Purview portal, Microsoft Purview, you go to audit. If it's not on, there's a big blue bar across the top. I'm sorry, I don't have screenshots for this one. And it says, would you like to enable auditing? Yes, you would. And by default, the unified audit log holds sign-in logs back up to 180 days. Right now, mailbox logging is only held 90 days. So it kind of gives us we get some weird, you know, sometimes we can see things, or sometimes we miss things because the 90 days have expired on the mailbox, but the unified audit log holds it for at least 180. At Solace, we have a proprietary tool that lets us pull it back often up to 364 days if need be, but only if it's on. So that is a big important thing. And we're really trying to like get the word out that like everybody needs to make sure this is on, because we won't be able to tell you anything if it's not, because Microsoft is moving everything into this, this type of log. So then, you know, users are the weakest link. User training, and not just those like fake phishing emails. I used to write those, and they were a lot of fun. And my boss told me I was too evil, and these were our clients. And I was like, but the CEO has his life story on their company page, and I can pretend to be, you know, like, hey, you know, I know your wife Betty, and because he has it all on his page. And so I got in not a lot of trouble, but my boss was like, you got to tone it down. You can't compromise. And I'm like, but it's training. They got to know this is what the bad guys are going to do. And he's like, they're going to not renew their contract with us. Stop. This is creepy. So, beyond that, just like phishing simulation assessment and all, you know, talk to your users like, hey, you know what? We don't use Microsoft Quick Assist. There's a problem. Our help desk will never ask you to do that. We use, you know, whatever. So letting them have some understanding and some like internal library of like, oh, you know what? We actually use Screen Connect. So yeah, it's true. It's true. Yeah. But at least you can say you've done your due diligence. From a CYA standpoint, at least you're like, well, we did do this thing. But that leads me to my next point of cultivating a culture of confession. People make mistakes. It happens. Some of these phishing emails are so sneaky, so insidious. They come from trusted contacts who have been compromised. They've been in the inboxes for a while. They have the intel to mimic how people talk, what, you know, deals they're working on, what invoices they're expecting. It's very, very tricky. And so rather than going from like a shame and blame kind of standpoint when people make mistakes, I mean, we've had cases, and Annie can speak to this, where people are like, this guy's going to be fired. He clicked on this link. We have a BEC. Now we got to file a claim and do our deductible. We're firing this person. Well, the next time somebody in that company makes a little mistake or clicks on something, are they going to be like, oh, hey, IT person, I clicked on something weird. Can you help me? No, they're just going to sweep it under the rug because they're going to be scared. So cultivating this culture of confession of where it's like, oh, hey, I did something weird. Shoot, I'm going to report it as fast as possible is going to reduce harm. It's going to help create a more secure culture because people are like, feel comfortable and like safe asking for help, asking for guidance on these things rather than, we all do it, right? We're like, oh my God, how do you not know? Like, why did you do this? This is obviously stupid. But when you do that to people who've made a mistake, it shuts them down and it makes you more insecure in the long term.
Training needs to be improved.
Yes, for sure. For sure.
Site, they're probably not going to be stepping up saying I made a mistake.
Well, they do when they find out the money's in the wrong thing, in the wrong place. It takes a while because, the money goes to the wrong place, but they think they've just paid it. And then in a few weeks later, the person they're supposed to pay it to comes back and is like, we never got that payment. What's going on? And then they work backwards and and then they come to us and they're like, oh my gosh, how did this happen? Well, again, it depends on the company, right? It depends on the situation. And yeah, it just depends. Hey, nobody wants to be in trouble except for Mark. So, okay. Any other questions or anything? Yeah. Ooh, that's a really good question. Also, I'm a river bat. That's where that's where I went back to school was at ACC. So I love ACC. And so you're saying what do we do when we have students that really don't have a direct line to IT support and they might have done something weird? Okay, so we get school and university cases fairly often, and they are the worst. They're the worst. They're huge. Students do all kinds of weird stuff. They are threat actors without even realizing it. I mean, kids really are like just OG threat actors. And then because of the volume of data we have to sort through, it's very, very difficult to do an investigation. And we typically only focus on faculty and staff in those cases. But for students, I mean, again, keeping things configured in a way that reduces harm so that they can't shoot themselves in the foot quite as often. Training, I know everybody has to go through orientations and things like that, including some sort of cybersecurity awareness training as part of general orientation or onboarding as part of joining the school. And try to like just help. The more people hear it, the more likely it's going to stick and the more likely they're going to react in the way we want. But students are real challenging. I'm sorry. That's all I can say. I have teenagers and they bypass all of the parental controls. Like, yeah, it's a whole thing. So that's kind of the end of it, unless we have any more questions.
See if there's feel free to ask questions in the room. I'm just
Yes. That's more of a question for Alex, actually, because I specifically work in like the cloud email area. A lot of those things happen automatically or yeah, it's just not something we are really looking for or seeing, but he is the business resumption manager and he works on all the ransomware stuff. And so I mean, it doesn't really update, like, so if you're talking about like the Outlook application, if it's configured, like ours is configured to update automatically and yeah, the new Outlook is bleh. Or if you,
So we're having discussion in the room, but people online can't hear, so keep
Uh,
that in mind.
we're talking about,
Carry that out. It's probably a good thing, so.
updating Outlook and other applications and how that is something that needs to happen at the organizational level, and it is also challenging, and user training is important. Yeah. Yeah.
I kind of like the opposite problem of what you described. Like usually when I get the emails, I think it's phishing emails. They actually turn out to be legitimate emails. So like, why do legitimate emails actually all look like phishing?
Well, because social engineering, right? And like our parent companies in London, and they all use the word kindly. And for a while, that was like a real red flag that it's a phishing email. Nobody in America says kindly, but we work with people in the UK and Australia, and that's pretty common. And so like, yeah, it's just, I mean, they're very savvy. They're imitating what's normal. They're tricking you, right? And labeling things urgent or overdue, or, and, you know, sending it on a Friday afternoon before a holiday weekend. All of those emotional tactics are leveraged really frequently to get people to do things that they shouldn't do. Yes.
Basically have several subcontractors. And you don't know when something happens, the investigation is not conclusive because there's so many hands that can touch that.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And especially like if you've got external users in your tenant or guest users, is that what you're talking about? That might be doing some contracting work? Yeah.
Those serve an IP that would be, you have 10 partners in IP, then you have suppliers.
Yeah, the larger the scale, definitely the harder it is. And the different, when you have a lot of different, like you said, different groups of people touching the same thing, it gets harder and harder to tell what is good and what is bad. And again, that kind of goes back to like configuring things the tightest way possible to still get the job done, and limiting access as much as possible so that people don't have more privileges or access than they truly need. So if they were to get compromised, like I see companies all the time, every C-level person has admin privileges in M365. In their daily driver email, they're all global admins. And there is no reason, honestly, to have a licensed global admin account in M365. You should have a separate admin account that is unlicensed, no mailbox, that is only used for admin changes. So like I have my A Waters at Solace Security, and then I would have A Waters admin at Solace Security. And then if I needed to make a global admin change, I would only specifically log into that account. That's free. Unlicensed mailboxes are free. And then again, it's reducing that harm. So then if somebody, a contractor or anybody were to click on a phishing email, it's only going to hit a regular user versus a global admin where the harm can be much greater. Even if it's an IT person that you're contracting with that needs to have those global admin privileges as well as communicate through email, two accounts, a daily driver and admin privileged account that's unlicensed. Right. Well, and that's why I'm saying like split it. Split it. And if it's unlicensed, they have no mailbox on that admin account. So there's no reason for them to click on a phishing email or send an email from there because there's no mailbox. So that is another free, easy way to strengthen it. Yes. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, just from my perspective and what we do, I would say 98% of our investigations are Microsoft and the rest are Google, the other like 2%. So not only is it a trusted brand that threat actors use for social engineering, because people are like, oh, it's OneNote, oh, it's Teams, it's SharePoint. I trust this because we use Microsoft. Most people, most organizations use it as a as their email provider. So yeah, I mean, it kind of goes both ways, right? It's widely used, it's widely trusted, and the threat actors know this and they use that to their advantage. Do we have online questions?
No, there's-
Okay, great.
I think we're
Well,
gonna wrap this up. Actually, if you want to stick around for more questions in the room, that's great, but we're gonna run out of time here for being online.
Yeah.
So thank you, Alexis. Thanks for doing this. And who would believe that was her first presentation? That was great, wasn't it?
What? That was great. Great job, Alexis. Thank you.
Job there. And hopefully y'all can join us next month for March. And I will hear from y'all or see y'all then. Thank y'all very much. Have a great day.